Spider-Man 2 is still considered as one of the best Spider-Man movies of all time. It was released almost 18 years ago on June 30th, 2004, and just like the prequel, it had its own movie licensed video game. 2 days before the movie came out, the Spider-Man 2 game made its way to PS2, Xbox, GameCube, Game Boy Advance, and PC. Now in this video, I'll be focusing on the console version, but more specifically the PS2 game. The PC, Game Boy Advance, and later released Engage, Nintendo DS, and PSP versions are entirely different games. The console version is universally considered the best one because of the revolutionary leaps it takes as a superhero game. Now, is it a masterpiece just like the movie? Let's go ahead and find out.
The power of the sun in the palm of my hand.
So just like the Spider-Man 1 game, this was developed by Treyarch and published by Activision. It follows the plot of the movie more than the Spider-Man 1 game did, but it still includes new and returning villains, a love interest, and other side content. I liked how there was more Peter Parker scenes and activities in this game. You do missions for the Daily Bugle, which I thought was pretty cool. And then speaking of that, after one of those missions, you actually run into the first new villain in this game, which is Rhino. He has probably one of the easiest boss fights in the game, but it was more so a warm-up to the combat controls than anything. And then later down the line, you get another Daily Bugle mission introducing you to another new villain and a returning villain. Quentin Beck, aka Mysterio, publicly challenges Spider-Man, and you have to go take pictures of the event, but you're showing up as Spider-Man. Mysterio rented out an entire stadium for Spider-Man to prove his skills to the public, and after this event, you see that Shocker escapes from prison. So those are the main villains you're really focusing on this entire game. Of course, Dock Ock, but we'll talk about him in a second. Mysterio's sections were really tedious more than anything, especially the funhouse part. When you get to that, where you have to break all the mirrors and you're fighting clones of yourself, it was just irritating. His boss fight was ironically the fastest one because all you have to do is just hit him once and you win. It was just a build up to that one punch that made him an annoying character. Unlike the movie, he doesn't actually quit being Spider-Man, but he does go through a mental battle trying to balance his two lives. His love interest, Black Cat, ends up being a perfect fit for this game. Not only does she take his mind off of Mary Jane, Spider-Man uses her as a shoulder to lean on while trying to find a balance in his life. I wish I could say that she was a helpful partner, but in this game she just takes you to the chaos and basically watches you take care of business. That is exactly what she did all the way up until she brought you to Shocker's hideout, and you fight Shocker twice in this game. Both of the fights, in my opinion, were dope, but they were challenging. The only useful thing that Black Cat does in this entire game is during the second fight with Shocker, she basically just helps you turn off the force field in that fight so you can actually attack him and do damage against Shocker. So that pretty much covers the main villains leading up to Dock Ock. Now let's get to him because man, throughout the game you visit Dock Ock, of course, for your research paper that you're doing on him. For Dr. Connors, it follows that just accurately like the movie. You finally make it to his big demonstration with the fusion reactor, and this is one of my least favorite parts of the entire game. Instead of just unplugging it from the wall just like how he did in the movie, of course the game has to be extra and make you dodge incoming shocks from the reactor, and you also have to avoid constant pulses coming from the reactor. There are 4 different panels that you have to destroy to turn off this reactor, and they are in 4 different corners of the room. The pulses of energy coming from the reactor cover almost the entire room, so that makes crossing the room even that much more difficult, and every time you get hit by a pulse, it ragdolls Spider-Man all the way to the start of the room. This part would have been easy if you had the ability to aim your web zip like you could in Spider-Man 1, but of course they took that ability out of the game. The rest of your encounters with Dock Ock are awkward because every time you fight him, you have to tie his tentacles down to the ground. In order to do that, you must dodge his attacks first, and then hope your web attaches to his tentacles. After that, you can actually fight him, but his hitbox is so weird that you might only get a few attacks in at a time. And speaking of fights, the bank fight against Dock Ock was so lackluster to me. He doesn't throw any money bags at you like he does in the movie. You're mainly fighting these random goons that show up with him instead of actually focusing on him. And then after you take out those goons, he takes Aunt May away in a helicopter and drops her off on a train track. Now this part is where it doesn't make any sense, because for one, how does Aunt May, Dock Ock, and the pilot all fit in that small ass helicopter? And then when Aunt May gets dropped off on the train tracks, why doesn't she just move to the side so she doesn't get hit by an oncoming train? There was plenty of space for her to move to the side, but that's neither here nor there. But since we're already talking about trains, they dumbed down the iconic train scene in this game. In the game, Spider-Man stops the train from behind on his first try. His suit or mask don't get messed up at all. It doesn't get scratched up. His mask never comes off in this scene. So it means that his identity didn't get revealed to any of the passengers on the train. It was just a little disappointing. And then to top everything off, the ending was so painful. The fusion reactor makes a return, but this time you have to turn off 9 power sources scattered around the room. And that isn't even the worst part. Guess where 2 of these power sources are? I'll give you a second to think. I don't understand why you thought this was a good idea. Someone had the bright idea to put one of these power sources on the ceiling, which doesn't make sense as it is, but then you have one underneath the floorboard next to water. And guess what? Spider-Man cannot swim at all in this game. So as soon as you hit the water, you die and you have to restart that entire section. On top of all of that, Dock Ock is literally following you all around, and the reactor is still pulsing and sending shocks, mind you, this entire time. And then after you turn the reactor off by, destroying all the power sources or turning all the power sources off, you still have to fight Dock Ock. Overall, I was very disappointed in these Dock Ock sections. The cutscenes were really the best part about it, if I'm being honest, and I love the Green Goblin sections from Spider-Man 1, so to see how they carry Dock Ock in this game, I just didn't like it. But besides the story, the gameplay is what drastically separates Spider-Man 2 from Spider-Man 1. It's still an action-adventure game at the end of the day, but this time around, instead of a level-based system, they went all out on an open-world version of Manhattan, New York. This is the first time a superhero game has had a true open world, which was huge for a game released in 2004. Treyarch made the fundamentals for this Spider-Man game as perfect as they could, and they managed to actually make the web swinging system realistic. Spider-Man's webs would actually attach to buildings, trees, signs, and pretty much anything that makes sense in the environment that you're in. Compared to all of the Spider-Man games before this where he would just swing from the sky randomly, this new system was game-changing for 2004. You could do tricks in the air, you can change the speed at which you swing at, and you can charge up your jump for your next swing because every swing had an individual web instead of just a continuous string of webs. And it just made moving through the open world setting a lot more fun once you got used to it. The combat is also vastly improved in this game. Just like Spider-Man 1, you have a bunch of combos that you can use while you're fighting. The only difference is the way you unlock these combos. In this game, you go to one of the several stores on the map to purchase upgrades, combos, tricks, and more. The currency that you use to unlock these things are called hero points. They can be earned from completing story objectives, doing side missions, helping citizens around the city, completing challenges, finding collectibles, and etc. The combat feels more responsive and alive thanks to the combos that you can do. The visual effects are great for the fighting, and even down to the sound of the punches. The only things I miss from Spider-Man 1's combat is the ability to pick up and throw objects from around your environment, and the fact that web attacks in that game did real damage, especially against bosses. Spider-Man 2's web attacks are used more for stunning really than anything else, and I assume the reason for this is because instead of having to pick up web ammo and manage that, in this game you actually have a Spidey Sense mechanic. You can charge it up by using the dodge mechanic, which now makes the combat feel so much more fluid than before. It also can be charged up by just swinging around the city and doing tricks, but you get to decide overall when you want to use this Spidey Sense mechanic. and it basically just slows down time, making dodging attacks way easier. You can use it to perform certain combos that require it, and it's really one of my favorite time manipulation mechanics next to Max Payne, of course. The camera angles in Spider-Man 1 was something that annoyed me constantly in that game, but the sequel, they weren't really that bad in my opinion. It isn't the best, but it's definitely way more bearable in this game, and they also brought back the lock-on features, so I didn't really have a problem with the camera during combat. And just overall, speaking of visibility, they made finding objectives way easier in this game by replacing the compass system with a mini-map, and they also have on-screen pop-ups showing how far away an objective is. It'll basically just give you like how many meters away you are, so it just makes traversing the environment way easier. You can always open up the full map at any time, which is great if you get lost. The open world has a good amount of things you can do in it, but a lot of it is busy work. The side missions you can do in this game are delivering pizzas, you can take pictures for the Daily Bugle, and you can do race missions to make it on time for a date with Mary Jane. After a while, it gets pretty repetitive and you don't get rewarded that well for completing pretty much any of these side missions besides like a little achievement, I guess. But that is the case for most of the side content in this game. I found that helping the people around the city was more fun than the actual side missions. Sometimes you'll have to stop car robberies, then you're intervening in a shootout between the police and some criminals. Next you're fighting some alien robots, and now you end up saving a person that's about to fall from a building. There was just a bunch of different scenarios that I ended up having fun with. There are a bunch of different challenges scattered around the map, which mostly consist of just different types of races. These are mainly for getting hero points, but besides that, you don't really get much for completing these. The collectibles you get around the city are basically different types of tokens that you can pick up. They also give you hero points, but the only real notable unlockable that you get is from the skyscraper tokens. You unlock a wall sprint upgrade if you collect all of these tokens, and as you can see, the trend is that you don't really get rewarded much for going out of your way to do all of these. Once you beat the game and you have enough hero points, you can actually go to the store and unlock the fighting arena and the theater. And the fighting arena, you basically have timed rounds against different type of enemies in the game, and if you beat the first 3 rounds, you unlock endurance rounds, and then after that you have boss rounds. And this arena actually has a secret boss fight, which is Calypso, and I didn't personally get to fight her because it's tough to even get past the first 3 rounds, if I'm being honest. I probably just need some more time to perfect the game, but you got to know what combos you need to throw once you get up on in there. The theater basically just allows you to watch like game demos, credits, and the Treyarch and Activision intros basically. I wish you could watch cutscenes and stuff. There also is an arcade on the map that has little mini games that you can play in it. It also serves as basically a tutorial to help you improve your combat, but you can still get like high scores in the games that you play, which is kind of cool in my opinion. Now the audio options in this game aren't as customizable as they were in Spider-Man 1. They have sliders for game sound and music, and that's about it. In the first game they had 4 sliders, one for sound effects, one for music, another for voice volume, and then one for movie volume, which was basically just for cinematic cutscenes. The mixing was kind of weird for the voices in this game, which is why I was hoping to kind of adjust that option, but you can't. Since we're already talking about audio, the soundtrack is a banger. I feel like I found myself humming along with this soundtrack in pretty much most scenarios. The voice acting also sounds like it got better across the board except for a few characters. The one that I can think of right away is the voice actor for Jonah Jameson. They didn't get JK to voice act him, so it sounded off in my opinion. Other than that, everything sounded a little more natural this time around. Some other things I wanted to point out is that this game does not have cheat codes, and that was one of my favorite things about Spider-Man 1. The only secret code that you can technically enter is by creating a new save file, and you can actually name your save files. If you type in the word Treyarch backwards, it automatically will start you off with a finished main story and a ton of hero points, so you can go and upgrade pretty much everything in the game. I just wish they at least brought back the cheat codes from Spider-Man 1, but that's all they have. The game doesn't even have a main menu screen, so the only place you can put a cheat code in, like I said, is that save file name. Another thing that this game is missing is like different suits that you can wear, or the ability to just play as other characters like you could in Spider-Man 1. Now I would assume most of these features didn't make the cut because of how much time they spent developing the open world in the game. This was back when games couldn't do updates or anything like that, so what came out is what you got. They probably just wanted to make sure the main content was there and worked in time for the release date. All in all, I would say that I had a good time playing this game. I definitely would recommend it if you're already interested in superhero games. It did a lot of stuff right and it paved the way for what we have today. So I think that's gonna wrap up today's video, but let me know what you guys think about Spider-Man 2 in the comments. Hopefully you guys did enjoy, and thank you guys so much for watching, man. I'll see you guys all in the next one. Peace.